U.S. small business optimism at the lowest point in nearly 12 years. How did this happen? Coming up on Business Matters. And good afternoon. Thank you very much for joining me here today. I'm Don Ma. Great show for you ahead. Start with markets here. S&P 500 posted small gains today, and this is of course coming a day before major inflation data. It was also weighed down by financial stocks as investors braced for major US banks to kick off earnings season. S&P 500 here, 7 points gained, or 0.1%. NASDAQ gained 52 points, or 0.3%. Dow fell 9 points, or nearly unchanged here. Let's take a look at a couple more banks here. JP Morgan, Wells Fargo, Citigroup are due to report results on Friday. They were the three heaviest drags on the S&P banking index. Also, the market's potentially nervous about tomorrow's CPI report and is buying protection amid a growing notion that it could be a high inflation reading. Okay, let's talk about Trump. Always fun to mention. He's no longer listed on the Bloomberg Billionaires Index. This index, by the way, is a daily ranking of the world's 500 richest people. And this happened because the price of his media company's stock fell about $2 billion. So why is Trump media stock, TMTG, so volatile? NTD Shar Marshall takes a look into what's causing the ups and downs of the stock.
Former President Donald Trump is no longer on Bloomberg's billionaire list. This comes after the stock of Trump's media company fell over 50% from its highest point. Trump owns about 60% of Trump media stock with 78.75 million shares, worth up to $6 billion after the company went public, which put him on the Bloomberg Billionaires Index. The value of Trump's holdings went closer to $3 billion as of Monday on paper. Trump cannot dump his shares until September without approval from the Trump Media Board. What would cause the stock to change so dramatically? Dan Cook, CMO at Apex Trader Funding, had some explanation for the Trump Media stock's activity.
I think because it's not related at all to fundamentals. It's purely, from what I can tell, an emotional play. Something that we saw similarly from Digital World acquisition prior to the merger. When the word came out about the merger, all of a sudden they're trading around 100. Within a year, they're back down around $13 to $15. Like, kind of the emotion wore off. And what do emotions do? They take you on a roller coaster. And I think that's really what we've seen here. There's really no fundamentals to back it up.
The lack of long-term investor support due to people looking to make a quick buck after a company merger or IPO release can cause a quick decline in a stock's value. They bet that Trump supporters' fascination with the stock was untethering TMTG's stock price from the company's business fundamentals. Reuters interviews with more than a dozen investors that posted about their positions on social media platforms such as Reddit and X found that most were looking to score a quick profit. Sean Marshall, NTD News.
All right, so what else is happening today? It seems like Boeing just can't shake the limelight recently. The Federal Aviation Administration is investigating a Boeing whistleblower's claims that the company dismissed safety and quality concerns. And those concerns are regarding the production of the plane's 787 and 777 jets. This is according to an agency spokesperson. A Boeing engineer apparently said he identified engineering problems that affected the structural integrity of the jets. And get this, he claimed that Boeing took shortcuts in the 787 assembly process. Though NTD was not able to independently verify the whistleblower's claims. Boeing stock fell 2% today. And Norfolk Southern also in the news today. That's because it's paying $600 million to settle lawsuits related to the February 2023 train derailment in eastern Ohio. Now, this settlement would resolve all class action claims within a 20-mile radius of the catastrophe in East Palestine. So the deal would also settle personal injury claims within a 10-mile radius from the derailment. About 50 cars of the freight train derailed near the Pennsylvania state line, some reporting hazardous materials. Around 2,000 of the town's approximately 4,800 residents were evacuated. Now, the agreement doesn't admit any liability or wrongdoing, though. Okay, moving on from that, here on Business Matters, we try our best to try to inform you on the things that matters. And this next one definitely matters to some. For those living near chemical manufacturers, it could be good news for you because the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency today finalized a rule that is going to reduce cancer-causing toxic air pollutants from chemical plants. So let me explain here. The rule is going to require regular air quality monitoring to protect communities surrounding those facilities. And the EPA says that it's going to cut the cancer risks for people in those communities by 96%. So what else matters to you today? Well, how about student loans? A coalition of 7 states suing the Biden administration over its latest plan to forgive the student loans. Here's what Secretary of Education Miguel Cardona said about the plan earlier today.
We're fixing a broken system. We're trying to provide a fair shot to Americans trying to access higher education. And we're doing that by addressing runaway interest. We know it's been out of control, the interest that people have to pay. We're going after those schools that are defrauding our borrowers.
Now, according to the White House, the new policies would apply to more than 30 million Americans. Nearly 70% of all federal student loan borrowers will see their debt reduced fully or canceled. In fact, earlier today, Missouri Attorney General Andrew Bailey announced he is leading a coalition of 7 states to sue the Biden administration. He called the loan forgiveness plan illegal and said, quote, Joe Biden cannot unilaterally cancel hundreds of millions of dollars in student loan debt and force everyday Americans to pick up the tab. And a new low for U.S. small business sentiment. A survey revealed that last month, small business confidence slipped down to its lowest in more than 11 years. The National Federation of Independent Business says its index has fallen below average for 27 consecutive months now. And a quarter of owners reported inflation as their single biggest concern. So, with small businesses feeling the pressure of inflation, we wanted to get a better understanding of what owners are up against. And that is why I spoke with Executive Director of NFIB Research Center, Holly Wade, about it. All right, Holly, thank you very much for being here today. I mean, the lowest optimism since December 2012. What happened here, Holly?
So it's certainly been difficult conditions for small business owners. And this last month, as you mentioned, it's the lowest optimism index that we've seen since December 2012. And it's mostly related to this 8-point decline in sales expectations. Looking at the industry demographics this morning, it was mostly concentrated with construction and retail. But inflation is the other part of the story that's making it very difficult for small business owners to effectively operate their business. It's the unwelcome guest that's been at the party for 2 years, unfortunately.
Now, I'm wondering if there's a disconnect between what we're seeing with small business optimism and the overall economy according to data that we're getting. Because if you look at the jobs report from last Friday, 303,000, pretty solid number, most would say. And you look at the last quarter's economic growth, 3.4%, I think, if I remember that correctly. And you look at the overall stock market has been on a rally for the past 5 months, S&P 500. Is there a disconnect? Tell us.
So certainly, Main Street and the stock market don't always go hand in hand. We have seen that over the decades. But for small businesses, in the last jobs report, as with previous employment reports, there might be some decent revisions going forward that we could see. But if the 303,000 additional jobs still holds, somewhere between 20 to 25% of those were in government jobs. So, not all of it's in the private sector. It is a bit of a mixed picture when it comes to small business, but many of them are still really in the throes of having to deal with inflation pressures on their end.
I see. And it is very important to look at small business because they make up most of the economy. Looking at 1 month is one thing, but I'm wondering, what is the trend as well when it comes to optimism for small businesses?
Well, we've been in this environment where our optimism index has been within about a band of about 4 points. So we've remained historically low for about 2 years now. And it's been in those 2 years where we've experienced this high level inflation, where current business conditions or their expectations of business conditions in the next 6 months have been very depressed. Very few are showing that this is a good time to expand, whether that's inflation pressures that are influencing that response, or just, for many of them, the lack of workers that they're able to attract to their business and not allowing them to expand in that context. So small business owners are having a hard time. They're still having a hard time moving through this kind of challenging environment that they're facing. And they have for about the last 2 years now.
All right, Holly Wade, thank you very much for your time in FIB.
Thank you.
Looking at macro data is one thing. It's another thing to just directly talk to businesses about how they're doing, right? And that's exactly what I did. Here's Nicole Walter, president of HM Manufacturing. So Nicole, it's been a while since we spoke. What has changed? How's business right now?
I would say a lot has changed from last year to this year. A lot has changed in terms of employee turnover, inflation, interest rates, and unfortunately, from last year to this year, we were slower last year. This year, it's starting to pick up a little bit more, but it's been quite a ride, I would say.
What are some challenges that you're still facing as of now?
Some of the challenges that we're still facing is definitely employees. I had to hire a recruiting firm just to kind of get some new faces in. That skilled labor is still quite an issue. Inflation has been kind of a problem. Energy costs have gone up, so we've seen that. Materials back on the rise again, which is unfortunate. But when we look at trying to buy new capital equipment, every 2 years we purchase or replace something new. This year we're kind of a little bit on the standstill of wanting to do that just because the interest rates are really high. So when you look at investing and look at buying, whether it's $500,000 or $1 million in equipment, every little tick of that interest rate kind of scares you in terms of cash flow and wanting to make that type of investment right now.
I see. So what would you say in terms of company growth? What are you seeing in terms of that?
So last year, we're very heavily integrated in the food, processed beverage, and packaging industry. And last year, we kind of had to take a pivot to change our industry types. We're now more concentrated in aerospace and defense just because that seems to be taking off. Food, bev, and pack really kind of just took a really big downslide. I was talking to some of my customers. They have a year's worth of inventory that they're trying to not get rid of, but try to be able to utilize. Some of those machines have just been sitting idle and not being able to ship out to their customers. So we've had to really transform the type of industries we go after. And aerospace and defense really seems to be the sector that is doing really great. So we've pivoted to that point.
So in terms of input costs for your company, the stuff that your company pays for, has that, the price there, has that slowed down from before, or is this the same, or is it more expensive, the input costs?
I would say the input costs are more expensive. I'm seeing that more on the healthcare side, the insurance side. Our suppliers have risen their rates too. They now continue to still have some of those surcharges that are left on. Their prices seem to keep continuing. And so my input costs have gone up, and it's just kind of one of those weird situations where as a small business, it's hard to really take on because if you're not allowed to kind of pass on those costs to your customer, you're kind of stuck.
What is your outlook for this year, 2024?
You know, I really want to be optimistic. Last year was kind of a down year. I was just at a board meeting for one of the boards that I sit on, and everyone kind of went around the room and was asking, you know, where is everyone at? And we kind of pinpointed where it's a slow growth market, semi-recession slow growth, not full growth. So, you know, we're trying to be optimistic. There are still orders being processed. We've changed markets. So we're hopeful. We're hopeful to see things kind of go on the rise. But I think everything will start to pan out right after the election.
All right. Thank you very much, Nicole. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
It's going to take a short break, but when we come back, escaping poverty by revolutionizing welfare. Lawmakers hear from witnesses who say welfare has become a way of life, trapping too many Americans. And as well, new data is showing that China's first quarter EV sales growth is the slowest in a year. What happened? We'll have more answers for you right after this short break. Don't go away.
How'd it happen?
She showed up dead on arrival.
This never gets easier.
It does when you call CarShield before your car breaks down. Look at these prices. The camshaft, transmission, engine.
Don't people know? A plan through CarShield could protect up to 5,000 parts and systems.
You hate to see it.
An out-of-warranty car is gonna break down eventually.
Right, which is why they need a plan through CarShield. Those expensive repair bills get paid and at the mechanic of their choice. They're notifying the family.
Poor guy, he doesn't even know what's coming.
Another victim of senselessly expensive repair bills. Can't save them all.
But we can keep trying. Didn't have to end this way. If he'd have just called CarShield before his car broke down.
Exactly.
Protect yourself from the unprecedented rise in cost for parts and repairs. Call now to save money with your price lock guarantee. Call 800-429-5128.
My name's Jen Marshall. I've been playing professional football in a women's league for 3 years now. We're about 3.5 weeks out of my second surgery now. I had no pain whatsoever, no tingling, no numbness, and I felt incredible. I'm able to do pretty much anything. He doesn't want me pushing it too much, but I'm able to do, assisted pull-ups now. I'm riding a bike. I'm walking continuously at an incline on treadmills. I can do push-ups again. I can get out of bed, no problem. You're in great hands.
Bonatti succeeds where others fail.
What was the process of actually putting this all together?
Many, many hours of finding the right camera angles and watching it. The first trouble started just after 1 o'clock.
45 pages, here it is right here. Donald Trump has been indicted.
Somber day for the country.
This all happened before President Trump's speech was over.
The founder of the Oath Keepers militia group is headed to prison for more than 18 years.
His lawyers didn't have this video. The video we're watching right now, his own lawyers did not have. There was a big question of what did the people do who actually did enter the building.
This is where we picked it up with the security footage that is new. At this point, the story dramatically changes.
The New Jersey man who assaulted a Capitol police officer on January 6th has been sentenced.
So this was withheld.
This was not shown to the defense.
That could be considered exculpatory evidence. This doesn't seem like what a lot of the media is showing.
It's going to change narratives no matter what your political perspective is. What we're after is the truth.
And welcome back to Business Matters. The U.S. is reportedly turning to African countries to reduce its reliance on China for key minerals. In a report, the United States Institute of Peace said economic and national security were dependent on securing a reliable supply of critical minerals. Now, these are resources that are key to a number of sectors, including electric vehicle manufacturing and defense industries. The group said that the U.S. is almost 100% reliant on, quote, foreign entities of concern, mainly China, for these minerals. And the concerns is that the U.S. would become vulnerable to China's export curbs. Western mining companies already falling behind the Chinese rivals in Africa who are broadening their investment throughout the country. And as well, sales are slowing for China's electric vehicle market. This is despite deep discounts and financial incentives. Sales for EVs rose just a bit in March. They also increased 14% in the first quarter, but it is the slowest quarterly growth in a year. Chinese authorities are trying to motivate car buyers. They have revised car loans and scrapped a government-set minimum down payment. They're also hoping car sales can help jumpstart the sluggish economy. China's EV giant BYD is forecasting falling profit margins this year as an EV price war intensifies. U.S. rival Tesla, Volkswagen, and NIO have launched finance plans with 0 to low interest rates to attract buyers. Okay, moving on. Lackluster demand in China also clouding the outlook for the luxury sector. Last month, French-based luxury group Kering warned that first quarter sales will be down by 10%, which is higher than what analysts had expected. The group blamed the slump on sales in Asia from its Gucci label. Analysts report that annual growth for global sales of luxury goods have slowed from double-digit growth, actually, about 9% last year. And that number is expected to drop even more. The world's biggest luxury group, LVMH, is expected to release its first quarter report next week, followed by Kering, Prada, and Hermes. Also today, lawmakers exploring revolutionizing welfare at a hearing Tuesday. Panelists, many of whom escaped poverty themselves, say welfare has trapped too many Americans. Here's a brief recap of the hearing.
Welfare is not a temporary safety net. It's a snare net.
Lawmakers heard from witnesses Tuesday on what new laws could help Americans escape poverty. Matt Paprocki entered poverty at age 24 when he quit his job to take care of his sick mother.
And one cold December day, she died in my arms, and I lost my purpose. I had no job. I had no money. I had no parents. Nobody needed me. For the next few months, I qualified for just about every welfare benefit there was, and I thank God that I never took them.
Paprocki says 70% of those on welfare never escape, and it continues generation after generation. He says he escaped by getting a job, not through welfare.
Those who get on government assistance too often get comfortable and figure out how to manipulate the system as much as possible so they can continue on the same pathway going forward. I've seen such thinking take down even the strongest of people.
Gianno Caldwell grew up in the welfare system. He saw his mother and grandmother become dependent, losing their pride to get more government checks.
When you get into this dependency mentality, it changes everything. Your focus can change. Your thoughts too quickly becomes, how can I get more? More housing, more food stamps, more cash from the government.
Caldwell says the system must be reformed and welfare should only exist for a period of time. A key problem?
The benefits cliff. Right now, we've created this impossible structure where families are forced with the decision of either cut back on their hours or don't take a promotion or receive additional government funding.
Many poor people don't want to work because they'd lose welfare checks. Witnesses say new legislation should gradually move people off welfare as they're working. Witnesses also suggest expanding work requirements and tax credits for apprenticeship programs. Arlene Richards, NTD News.
And we're in the home stretch now for today's episode. And you know what else is in the home stretch? Tax season. April 15th, federal filing deadline, less than 1 week away. But those looking for last-minute tax tips on social media, may not always get the best advice, according to the IRS. We take a look at some of the red flags.
From budgeting to student loan payments, the hashtag FinTalk has exploded on TikTok.
It really just shows how many people are looking for that personal finance advice, how to save their paycheck, how to spend their paycheck, and especially during this time of year, how to file taxes.
Brad Messner of the National Association of Tax Professionals and a professor at the University of Pittsburgh says social media can give voice to some helpful sources for tax topics, but not all have the same credibility and expertise.
In a lot of cases, there's a lot of intricacies and nuances. So there is no way in a 15-second, or even in some cases, a 30-second or 3-minute clip to explain all of the details around the topic.
The IRS said this week bad information on social media, including schemes like misusing W-2 forms to scam a bigger refund, can lead a taxpayer to big trouble. Nick Molney, managing editor at CNET, says users should always do their own research.
The fact check that you always want to put into place, make sure that you know the basics and that you're not just following someone's potential get-rich-quick messaging that may or may not even be true.
After all, Messner says it's the individual filer who's held accountable for that tax return.
When you submit that return or when you sign that return, you are ultimately responsible for it. And if anything comes into question, just the response of, oh, well, I saw that on TikTok is not really a valid response in the terms of an audit.
All right, that's all the stories we have for you today. Thank you very much for watching. If you have any feedback for the show, feel free to let me know down below in the comments. And don't forget, business matters. Goodbye.